Hello, friends. Welcome to Uncle Bo's Scary Stories, where we dive into creepy tales, mysterious creatures, folklore, and the supernatural. Many of you have probably wondered what awaits us after death. Religions offer various explanations, but that's a matter of faith. However, humans have always been curious to peek behind that veil of mystery. Think of Odysseus descending into the underworld or Dante wandering through the circles of hell. In many folk tales, the hero ventures into the realm of the dead to rescue a fair maiden. The 19th century, with its rapid technological advancements, provided new ways to explore that boundary between life and death. One such method was spirit photography, which we'll be talking about today. As usual, let's start from the beginning. The 19th century was a time of major technical revolutions that completely transformed people's lives. Railroads made travel faster, steam engines powered factories and mills that could produce goods more efficiently, and electricity began lighting up cities. Automobiles started appearing on streets, and in salons you could have your photo taken. While photography didn't seem as groundbreaking as steam engines or electricity, it certainly changed how people perceived the world. It's hard to imagine now, but back then you couldn't see people, events, or places without being there in person. The main ways of recording and sharing information were text and drawings, which weren't always accurate because they reflected the artist's or writer's perspective. For the first time in human history, photography allowed people to witness events without being present or look into the face of someone who might no longer be alive. The impact of photography was so strong that many people believed it had limitless potential. Some even thought that photography could break the barrier between the living and the dead, not just metaphorically, but in a very real sense. And amid the era's rapid technological progress, a massive wave of interest in the supernatural swept through society. Spiritual teachers, strange old sages, secret societies, and occult movements sprang up everywhere. The mysterious, the mystical, and the occult fascinated the masses. And of course, many people claimed to communicate with spirits. Spiritualism became one of the most popular occult movements of the 19th century. Spiritual salons and mediums were everywhere, and many people believed in the existence of ghosts and spirits, and that it was possible to communicate with them. This was the moment when spirit photography emerged, gaining particular popularity in America. So let's dive into the story. In Boston during the 1860s, a jewelry engraver named William H. Mumler accidentally discovered spirit photography while experimenting with self-portraits. Photography offered the chance to earn decent money. A good portrait could bring in $1, which was a substantial sum back then. One day, while practicing self-portraits, Mumler noticed something strange in one of his photographs. During one such session, he noticed a blurry, ghostly figure in the background. To his surprise, he recognized the figure as his cousin, who had died 12 years earlier. This discovery marked the beginning of his career as a spirit photographer. His wife Hannah eagerly supported him and began spreading the word that Mumler had captured a ghost on film. She shared the story during seances, dinner parties, and other social gatherings. The news that a photographer had managed to capture a spirit caused a sensation in Boston. People believed that photography was a miracle, and the possibility of seeing their long-lost loved ones on film captivated their imaginations. Keep in mind, this was long before Photoshop and artificial intelligence, which can create any image you want today. Back in the 19th century, photography was just gaining popularity, and people viewed it as a magical way to capture fleeting moments. Photographers were seen as almost alchemists, able to stop time itself. Mumler quickly realized he could turn this into a business. Soon, Boston newspapers started running articles about his miraculous photographs, along with ads for his photo studio. People flocked to him from all over, hoping to capture the image of their deceased relatives. His services, which initially cost $1, soon increased to $10, the equivalent of about $150 today. Mumler began actively advertising his services in newspapers and occult magazines, which helped spread his fame far beyond Boston. In most of his photographs, the spirit figures were blurry and indistinct, which allowed clients to imagine who they were seeing in the image. If a visitor wasn't satisfied with the result, Mumler would explain that spirits decided how to appear on the photo, and he couldn't control that process. This left room for interpretation, and many people found comfort in the belief that their loved ones were somehow still with them. However, as Mumler's success grew, so did the skepticism. One of his harshest critics was the famous showman and circus promoter P.T. Barnum. Barnum accused Mumler of tricking his clients, claiming he would secretly break into their homes, steal photographs of their relatives, and then use double exposure to add them to new images. Barnum even took Mumler to court in April 1869, accusing him of fraud. Despite the trial, no conclusive results were reached. Mumler argued that he wasn't responsible for the spirit's appearance on the photographs and claimed to be just as surprised as anyone else when ghosts showed up. He also warned that he couldn't guarantee the quality of the photos because it all depended on the will of the spirits. One of his most famous images was a portrait of President Abraham Lincoln's widow, Mary Todd Lincoln, with the transparent figure of her deceased husband standing behind her. Taken in 1872, the photograph caused a sensation and drew even more attention to Mumler. Mary Todd Lincoln, who had lost her husband and 3 sons, was a devout believer in spiritualism and sought solace in the possibility of communicating with her departed loved ones. Spirit photography, which started as a phenomenon in America, soon spread to Europe, where it remained popular until World War II. Even the famous author Arthur Conan Doyle, creator of Sherlock Holmes, was a believer in spiritualism and participated in similar sessions. Although Mumler found success, skepticism continued to grow. By the early 1870s, more and more people began exposing the tricks behind spirit photography. Mumler passed away in 1884, and though his contributions to photography were recognized, his spirit photos were only mentioned briefly. In conclusion, the story of William Mumler isn't just about a man trying to peek behind the curtain of life and death. It's also a story about how technological advancements can be used for both great discoveries and deception. While we may never know exactly how Mumler created his images, his experiments had a lasting impact on the world of photography. Some historians believe that Mumler used double exposure to create his spirit photographs. According to this theory, he prepared microscopic images of the ghost on a sensitive glass plate, which he then inserted into the camera. Using a small lens, the ghostly image would be projected onto the same plate as the client's photo, making the spirit appear in the final image. However, the exact details of how he achieved this effect remain unknown. Another theory suggests that Mumler simply reused uncleaned photographic plates from previous sessions, causing old images to overlay on new photographs. He may have also used multiple negatives to create a complex and mysterious image, leaving clients to interpret what they saw. Because the ghostly features were often blurry, viewers had to use their imagination to recognize a familiar face. In addition to technical manipulation, Mumler likely had accomplices. He may have had them dressed up as spirits, moving in front of the camera to create blurred, unrecognizable figures, adding to the mystery and intrigue of his photos. Despite the criticism and attempts to debunk his work, Mumler remained popular with those who believed in spiritualism. His photos were especially sought after by people grieving the loss of loved ones. Many widows who had lost husbands in the Civil War flocked to Mumler, eager to capture one last image of their departed. After the trial initiated by P.T. Barnum, Mumler managed to avoid serious consequences. One of his key defences was that he couldn't control the spirits that appeared in his photos, and therefore he couldn't be held responsible for the results. Ultimately, the court couldn't prove his guilt, and Mumler was acquitted. Even though his reputation began to wane and more skeptics emerged, Mumler's influence on photography was undeniable. During his experiments, he developed a process that made it easier to print photographs on newspaper paper, similar to how wood engravings were reproduced. Known as the Mumler process, this technique played a key role in popularizing photojournalism and mass-produced photographs. Mumler passed away on May 16, 1884. His obituary acknowledged his contributions to photography, though the spirit photos were only briefly mentioned at the end. His wife, Hannah Mumler, stopped communicating with him shortly after his death, although their marriage was never officially dissolved. She continued her involvement in mysticism and healing practices, remaining devoted to the occult. Although many view Mumler as a charlatan, his experiments with photography and technical innovations made a significant impact on the development of the medium. His spirit photographs remain a reflection of an era when belief in the mystical and a longing for contact with the afterlife were especially strong. Whether or not Mumler truly peered into the other world through his lens remains a mystery, but his work continues to captivate and raise questions. If you enjoyed this story and content like this, drop a comment below. I read them all. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with your friends.